Last week we learned that the Bechoros offered Olos and Shlamim, and out of those Olos and Shlamim, the dam was collected. So we're told here that Moshe took Es Hadam vayizrok al ha'am, and he poured the blood on the people, threw the blood on the people. Vayomer, and he said, Hinei dam habris asher karas Hashem imachem, right? That this is the dam of the, you know what? I skipped the pasuk. Let's go back. Pasuk, at the end of pasuk Vav, we said, Vayikach Moshe chatzi adam vayasem baganos, v'chatzi adam zarak al hamizbeach. First, Moshe took half the dam and he threw it on the mizbeach. Now, obviously, how did Moshe know what half the dam was? And how is it possible for Moshe Rabbeinu? Right? They did all these karbanos. How would,
just same way the Kohanim collect blood
right, but correct. But generally, if I bring a carbon, right, the blood from that animal gets collected in a basin, and then I'm zorek that blood on the mizbeach. If it's a carbon, right. However, what is the pasuk telling us? The pasuk is telling us that Moshe took half. What does that imply? It implies he didn't take more than half. He didn't take less than half. He didn't take about half. He took half the dam. How is it possible that he took half the dam? Says the Medrash, a malach came and split up the dam. It's the only possible way that we have to explain how Moshe Rabbeinu knew exactly how much half the dam was, because half the dam was put on the mizbeach and half the dam was put on the people. So the only way Moshe Rabbeinu could have known that, says the Medrash, is that a malach came and a malach split the blood. Now, so this is the first part, the first half of the blood, which goes on the mizbeach. The second half of the blood went on the people. This idea that the second half of the blood went on the people actually fulfills something that we know. We talk about a gerus, we talk about a person converting, so we say that person needs to undergo certain things. Number one, tevilah, mikvah. Number two, kabbalas ol malchut shamayim, person has to accept mitzvos. And number three, what's number three? If it's a man, he needs to be circumcised. But there actually is a fourth thing. And what is that? For a man, it's karban. And for a woman, it's the third thing, it's karban. Meaning that there will, when the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, that all of the Gerim who are alive at that time will come to bring karbanos. The karban, the hartza'as dam of the karban is part of the gerus process. It's not ma'akev, meaning today we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. So if I want to convert and I'm a man, so I have tevilah, I have milah, I have kabbalas ol malchut shamayim. What about karbanos? When can I? Right? Where's my karban? So the answer is I don't have a karban. Right? I don't have a karban because I can't possibly bring the karban because there's no Beis HaMikdash. I can't possibly bring the karban.
So at the time of the Mashiach, when they have a Beis HaMikdash, if somebody was a convert and then he had a son, and the convert son or animal, would the son have to?
No, just the ger. Just the ger himself. In other words, the ger himself would have to come and bring a karban where there would be zerikas dam.
And what kind would it be?
It would be a karban ola. Okay. It would be a karban ola, and with that he would be yotze. He would fulfill his obligation. His son is not a ger. A ger only applies to this individual per se. It doesn't apply to his son. His son is not a ger. But for this individual, that's what he would have to do. And we actually see that from, now, we know Milah, where was Bris Milah done? Before Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim. Right. We know all the men, before Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim, all the men had Bris Milah. Now, wait a second. What do you mean all the men had Bris Milah? Didn't they have Bris Milah before then?
No,
the answer is no. They didn't have Bris Milah before then. They actually stopped having Bris Milah in Mitzrayim.
Some of them may have, but the majority
there was a mass milah before leaving Mitzrayim. So that's the bris milah, right? That's the bris milah part of the gerus. Where's Kabbalas al mitzvos?
Well, that was the 10 Commandments.
That's what we have right here. We're going to read about Kabbalas al mitzvos. When Kol Asher Diber Hashem Na'aseh v'nishma. Bnei Yisrael responded and they said Na'aseh v'nishma. That's Kabbalas al mitzvos. Now, we know that when you do a gerus, it's not enough to have a general Kabbalas al mitzvos. What do you have to do? You actually have to ask the ger certain questions in certain areas so that the ger can't claim retroactively that I didn't know about these things. There are certain areas you're supposed to ask those questions. So that's Kabbalas al Malchut Shamayim, Kabbalas al mitzvos. What, by the way, what happens if a ger says, I'm prepared to accept everything except one particular mitzvah? Can't convert. Doesn't matter what the mitzvah is. He says, I'm prepared to accept everything except I don't want to do sukkah. Can't convert. Kabbalas al mitzvos. And then finally, what do we have? We have hartza'ah. We have this carbon, which is a sign of the bris, a sign of the covenant between Bnei Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What? Well, where was the mikvah? Where did all these people go to mikvah?
It's on Har Sinai. It's a miracle. They developed there. It was there.
What does the Torah tell us? The Torah tells us that the men and the women are supposed to be separated. Moshe Rabbeinu comes back and he says the men and the women are supposed to be separated. We learned this already, right? It says correct. The pasuk says, let's see. Actually mentioned before, even though we're now reading about after. Remember our whole discussion of Rashi and Ramban. Actually, we're going to see it's going to be all the way back here. Page 402. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, lech el ha'am, go to the people, v'kidashtem hayom umachar, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, v'chipsu simlo sam. And what should they do? V'chipsu simlo sam. It doesn't mean to put your clothes in the washing machine with Tide detergent. What does it mean, v'chipsu simlo sam? It means to immerse your clothes in the mikvah. The people had to immerse themselves in the mikvah, and they had to immerse their clothing in the mikvah so that there shouldn't be any tumah. Kadosh Baruch Hu required 2 days. Moshe Rabbeinu of himself added on an extra day. So this was the tevilah that Bnei Yisrael went through. We must explain then that there existed on Har Sinai, somewhere on Har Sinai, a place for Bnei Yisrael to do tefillah. Had to be relatively big, right? Or else many mikvos, right? Many mikvos that, I mean, how many people are we talking about here, right? We're talking about, can I help you? For Mariv? We do not have an 8:15 Mariv at Great Neck Synagogue. There's a 9 o'clock Mariv at the Young Israel Great Neck.
No, I'll make it back.
Okay. No, okay. Okay. So what are we saying here? So we're saying that the people did actually immerse themselves. This was the tefillah. So we have Kabbalas al mitzvos, we have tefillah, we had milah for the men. Now we have hartza'as down. We have the carbon, which is brought as well. Okay, back to page 440. The Torah goes on to say, Vayikach Sefer Habris, that Moshe Rabbeinu takes the Sefer Habris, Vayikra Bo'oznei Ha'am, and he reads it to the people, Vayomru, and the people say, Kol Asher Diber Hashem, Naaseh V'nishma. Whatever whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, and we will listen. Na'aseh technically means we will do. V'nishma means we will listen, we will seek to understand, we will learn.
So it was the Sefer HaBris.
So what was the Sefer HaBris? So let's look at Rashi. What does Rashi say? On the left column, 2 lines up from the bottom of Rashi, Sefer HaBris, Rashi says, Mi Bereshis v'ad matan Torah u'mitzvos shenitztavu b'mara. What was the Sefer HaBris according to Rashi?
Well, Rashi said, well, it was the
Mi
same
Bereshis until what?
till we're giving-
Until Matan Torah.
Right, so
Mi Bereshis until Matan Torah. And the mitzvos that were given at Mara. What mitzvos were given at Mara?
court,
Either Para Aduma or Kibud Av Ve'em
courts,
and
and
Shabbos. Okay? So what is this idea? This is because remember what Rashi says. Okay? Rashi says, when did this take place? Right? When did this whole incident take place? According to Rashi, everything that we're reading now, when did this take place? Before the 10 Commandments. Rashi says this all took place before the 10 Commandments. If according to Rashi, this all took place before the 10 Commandments, what was the Sefer HaBris that he had? He didn't have the 10 Commandments. He didn't have all of Mishpatim. What was the Sefer HaBris that he had? He had Bereshis up until Matan Torah and the mitzvos of Mara. Now, you know what? Think about it for a second. If you hear that, then how great is Na'aseh v'nishma? Na'aseh v'nishma is not so great,
Rashis only has 2 minutes.
right? Because what is Na'aseh v'nishma? What? Na'aseh v'nishma what? Na'aseh v'nishma Shabbos? Okay. Na'aseh v'nishma Para Duma? Okay. Na'aseh v'nishma maybe Kibud Av Ve'em? Okay. No, so they had those things. They had those things. But the bulk of the laws they didn't have. They didn't have the laws against idolatry. The bulk of the laws they didn't have. And yet, nevertheless, they said, Na'aseh v'nishma. According to Rashi, that was sufficient.
So we will do that which we have just read, as opposed to what we will just hear.
No, in other words, Na'aseh, we will do it. Everything that you're reading, we will do. We accept it. We're going to do it, and we'll learn about it. But not the 10 Commandments.
They already, the events already preceded them. They already experienced jobs. They always had that.
Yeah, no, you're right. Eddie, you're absolutely right. Shabbos, no question. Right? Shabbos are one of the laws that were learned at Mara. Shabbos, there's no
Not all
question.
the rules of Shabbos, some.
I mean, what I'm saying is not additional redundancy. There's no need for, you're reading what you already know.
And how you've already lived, basically, you're saying. Well, let's just remember something. Let's just get a perspective here. How many days post Yetzias Mitzrayim are we?
41 days.
Not 49 complete days yet, 45 days, 44 days, 47 days maybe. I mean, depending upon what we're talking about here. But maybe 48 days, if this is the 5th day, maybe 48 days. 48 days is nothing, right? Think about it, right? What, 48 days? How many Shabbos have they observed in 48 days? 6? 5 or 6? They came out of Mitzrayim on what day? They left Mitzrayim on what day? They left Mitzrayim on a Thursday, right? So maybe they observed 6 Shabbos, right? And when was Mara? Mara was already after 7 days, right? So the first Shabbos, they didn't know. They didn't have the laws of Shabbos. The first Shabbos occurred when? The first Shabbos occurred right after they left Mitzrayim. They didn't have the laws of Shabbos yet. The laws of Shabbos weren't given until 5 days later, right? So they observed 5 Shabboses. It's not like 40 years later where we say Bnei Yisrael have gone through the desert and they've observed 40 years of Shabbos. That's not what we're talking about.
On the other hand, there's an immediacy to it, and it's exciting about something that's novel and special as opposed to people just getting jaded over 40 years.
No, in Achinami, you're right? That's true. And clearly the Na'aseh v'nishma represents that willingness to say, whatever you give us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're prepared to do, right? Na'aseh v'nishma. If we learn it to be just based on what the Sefer HaBris is according to Rashi, it's a little bit harder. If we go according to the Ramban, what is the Sefer HaBris? The Sefer HaBris is from Bereshis all the way up until Parshas Truma, right? All through Aseres Hadibros, all through Mishpatim, all through all the. Now Na'aseh v'nishma is a big deal. Okay, Na'aseh v'nishma is a big deal. In other words, if I say to you, listen, you got 3 things to do, and you say, okay, I agree to do it. It's nice, but even if you're enthusiastic, I'm really excited to do those 3 things. But what about it now? Now you have 100 things to do. So your commitment to 100 things is much more substantial.
Let's be realistic about it. The other nations of the world had only 10 nations when they couldn't do it right.
No, I'm not denying that. Well, they didn't have 10 mitzvahs; they had 7 mitzvahs.
Sorry, me too.
Right? But I mean, I'm not denying that the one mitzvah of we're not worshiping any other gods, they couldn't do. Right? So ein achinami, it's true. I'm just saying, based on Rashi, Na'aseh v'nishma is a little bit tarnished. It's a little bit tarnished based on Rashi, because we're saying it only works. The Na'aseh v'nishma only works up to the time when they got the Aseres Hadibros. It doesn't speak to the time after Aseres Hadibros. According to the Ramban, it would, but according to Rashi, it doesn't. That's the Sefer HaBris here. I want to share. Hold on a second. Like 440, page 440.
They were, even as B'nai Noach, they were not allowed to do idolatry and some of the other things, so that they were hooked in on those too. Theft, idolatry.
I mean, look, they were bound by the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. There's no question about that. I just want to see if I can find the Ramban here. No, I don't see the Ramban here. But the idea is that according to the Ramban, where this all occurred after Matan Torah and after Mishpatim, so it becomes the Na'aseh v'nishma, which we have here, is a much bigger deal. Okay, so Vayikach Sefer HaBris, Moshe takes the Sefer HaBris, Vayikra bo aznei ha'am, Vayomru, and the people say, Kol asher diber Hashem Na'aseh v'nishma, everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you say, Na'aseh v'nishma, we are going to do. Okay. This Na'aseh v'nishma. Obviously, you're very familiar with the importance that the Gemara attaches to Na'aseh v'nishma. Darash Rabbi Simai. Rabbi Simai learns the following. B'sha'a shehikdimu Yisrael Na'aseh v'nishma. In other words, what's the greatness of Na'aseh v'nishma? What's the greatness of it? What is that? The greatness that lies. Right? Na'aseh, we commit ourselves to do it. And then v'nishma. What is v'nishma afterwards? Nishma doesn't mean we'll hear. A lot of people translate it as we'll do and we'll hear. No, doesn't mean we'll do and we'll hear, because you have to hear first in order to be able to do it. But what does it mean? Na'aseh, we'll do it, v'nishma, and then we'll try to probe the depths of the mitzvah. Then we'll try to understand the idea behind the mitzvah. But our doing it is based not on our understanding of the mitzvah. Our doing it is based on simply the fact that you, God, command us to do it, right? Because you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, command us to do it, we are going to do it. Do we understand it? Not necessarily. Maybe we will understand it, maybe we'll never understand it, but that's the Na'aseh v'nishma. And that's why it says, that's why the Gemara says, B'sha'a shehikdimu Yisrael Na'aseh v'nishma. In other words, when the secret here was that Bnei Yisrael said Na'aseh before Nishma. Because the logical approach is Nishma v'Na'aseh, right? Okay, let's teach me about it, right? Let me understand it, and then after I understand it, I'll do it. That's the logical approach. Nishma v'Na'aseh. Along comes Bnei Yisrael and says Na'aseh v'Nishma. Because they were makdim Na'aseh l'Nishma, what happened? Says the Gemara, this is the Gemara Masechah Shabbos, a very well-known Gemara, Ba'u shishim ribo shel malachei hasharis. What happened? 600,000 malachei hasharis, 600,000 angels descended from Shamayim. V'kishru l'chol echad v'echad miYisrael shnei ksarim. And what did they do? And every one of Bnei Yisrael got 2 crowns. Right? V'kishru, they literally tied the 2 crowns onto Bnei Yisrael. It's interesting. What is this language of v'kishru? What does it mean they tied the 2 crowns on Bnei Yisrael? Okay, so that's exactly the point, all right? In other words, 2 crowns don't fit on your head at the same time. You can't normally wear 2 crowns on your head. The Malachim came down and arranged it so that the 2 crowns stayed on the heads of Bnei Yisrael. I don't know if they changed the heads of Bnei Yisrael or they changed the crowns, or maybe they didn't change anything. Just they were able to get this to work, where Bnei Yisrael were now wearing, each one of Bnei Yisrael were now wearing 2 crowns. Echad kineged Na'aseh, the Echad kineged Nishma. Okay, 1 crown was for Na'aseh, and the other crown was for Nishma. Now, if you ask a school child about this Gemara, they'll tell you they know the Gemara, right? They know the Gemara. Yeah, the angels came down, they put crowns on our head. Every child knows this Gemara, but think about this Gemara for a second. This is a little bit of a difficult Gemara. Why is it difficult? Because if the whole essence here is that Bnei Yisrael said Na'aseh before they said Nishma, how many crowns should they have gotten?
1,200,000.
Why?
Because there were 600 angels, 600,000 angels, and each one gave 2 crowns.
But why? I'm saying my question.
600,000 men.
No, my question is why 2 crowns? In other words, yes, Eina Chinami. The Gemara says Echad Keneged Na'aseh, the Echad Keneged Nishma. But the kunz was not they said Na'aseh. The kunz was not that they used both terms. What was the nekuda? What? They said Na'aseh first.
Okay, so if you say
right?
Na'aseh first, you get credit for both.
Right? In other words, they said Na'aseh first. So because they said Na'aseh first, what does that mean? Oh, they said Na'aseh first. So the angels came down. And this was a big deal that they said Na'aseh first. So why didn't they just get a crown for Na'aseh? Why did they get a crown for Na'aseh? 2 crowns. 1 keneged Na'aseh and 1 keneged Nishma. Nishma is a logical thing, right? Everybody wants to understand what they're doing.
No, but it's learning Torah that's that in itself. They were still learning. Some people just, there are people that grew up with Orthodoxy and they just do it blindly, blind faith, and they don't learn.
I'm basing myself on the Gemara. Eddie, hang on, I'm basing myself on the Gemara. B'sha'a shehikdimu Yisrael na'aseh l'nishma. What was the trigger that brought these malachim down? At the moment that Bnei Yisrael said Na'aseh before Nishma. Right? And it's not the fact that they said both. It was the fact that they said Na'aseh first, before Nishma. Nishma is the logical approach, right? You're entering, you're entering into a business deal with someone. So their lawyer hands your lawyer a stack of papers. What is your lawyer going to do? He's got to look at it first. He has to understand before you sign it. He's got to understand what you're signing, right? I don't know that a lawyer worth his salt. Is that the expression? I don't know. All right. And I don't know that if a lawyer would simply take the piece of paper and give it to you and say sign without knowing what it says, that would make me very nervous. Right? It's logical, it's rational to want to know what's in it first. But Israel didn't do that. They said Naaseh before Nishma. And that's what triggered off these malachim. The fact that they said Naaseh first. So why didn't they just get one crown? Why not one crown to symbolize the fact that they said Naaseh first? Right? Why not one? Right? One crown to signify that they said Naaseh. No, give them a crown. They said Naaseh before Nishma. Give them a crown for saying Naaseh before Nishma. Why one crown for Naaseh, one crown for Nishma? Why these two crowns? Anybody?
I was going to elaborate on something else. I think it was alluded to that the actual Nishma of the effort to understand, comprehend, expound, elaborate, all that stuff is worth something and it's substantial. Otherwise, you became a robot in terms of your observance and you don't expound and grow.
Okay, let's back up for a second. Let's assume that Bnei Yisrael said Nishma v'Naaseh. Let's assume Bnei Yisrael said Nishma v'Naaseh, page 440. Assume Bnei Yisrael said Nishma v'Naaseh. Would they have gotten any crowns? Why not? They said Naaseh. If they said Nishma v'Naaseh. Instead of saying Naaseh v'Nishma, Bnei Yisrael said Nishma v'Naaseh. Because, why? Because they're not doing it? Okay. So if they had said Nishma v'Naaseh, you maintain they wouldn't have gotten any crowns.
Maybe they would only say Nishma. They're not going to say Naaseh.
No, obviously we don't know that. I'm trying to be medayek here in the language of the Gemara. The fact that the Gemara says B'sha'a shehikdimu Naaseh v'Nishma, where it's the whole kunst, the whole greatness of the Jewish people is found in the fact that they said Naaseh first.
Or you could say the impulsivity.
They were impulsive, Bnei Yisrael were impulsive.
Naaseh v'Nishma, we'll do
I
it.
mean, it's basically repetition of what Abraham did, sacrifice Isaac. I'm just doing it, and I don't understand it, and it's the same kind of.
The question still stands, why two crowns?
Right, that was my question. My question is why two crowns? In other words, the Gemara tells us 600,000 angels came down, and they attached two crowns to each head. One keneged Naaseh, one keneged Nishma. My question is, why two? Why two crowns? Why not just one crown? For the fact that they were makdim Naaseh to Nishma. The fact that they were, because they said Naaseh first, that's good. We'll give them a crown for that. Why are we giving them two crowns? What? Well, I mean, there's a sheet that says they didn't accept Torah Sheba'al Peh here. Torah Sheba'al Peh wasn't accepted until Purim time, right? It wasn't accepted willingly until Purim time, right? It wasn't accepted willingly until Purim time. Right, in Achinami, it is a medrash, okay? So I want to suggest as follows. Perhaps we could understand this Gemara in a little bit of a deeper way. In other words, I was sort of putting out a straw man here, saying the fact that they said Naaseh first is what brings them the crown. And therefore, why didn't it just bring them one crown for saying Naaseh before Nishma? Right? One crown for saying Naaseh before Nishma. So I think maybe Eddie hinted at the answer that I wanted to suggest to you, which is even if a commitment of na'aseh was made, or it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not just looking for rote observance. Kadosh Baruch Hu wasn't looking for Bnei Yisrael to be robots. Kadosh Baruch Hu wasn't looking for Bnei Yisrael to just do everything that he said because he said it, right? And that's what Naaseh is. Naaseh is doing everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says simply because he said to do it. In fact, there's another Gemara. Let me share this other Gemara with you. B'sha'a, this is a different Gemara. I mean, it's a different section of Shabbos. A little further down. B'sha'a she'ekdimu Yisrael na'aseh l'nishma yotzasa bas kol v'amra mi gila l'bini raz zeh shemalachei hashares mishtamshim bo. Okay. What does the Gemara say? All right, Rabbi Eliezer says at the moment that they said Naaseh v'nishma, Yatzta Baskol, Baskol. What's a Baskol? A Baskol is a communication from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What did the Baskol say? The Baskol said, who revealed to Bnei Yisrael this secret of my malachim? What's the secret of the malachim? What's the secret of the malachim? No, that's not what it's referring to. That they obey without any possible temptation to do the wrong thing. Right, correct, right? But this is the nature of malachim. Naaseh, right? The malachim say naaseh. Naaseh means, Kadosh Baruch Hu, you tell us what to do, and we're going to do it. In fact, the malachim are so oriented to naaseh that they can only have one job at a time. Right? They can only have one shlichus, only one job at a time. Because their entire being is defined by that which they are doing. Right? They can't have two things. Right? Can't have two things going on at once. You can't, right? The malachim can't have two missions. Because their very being is defined by the mission. They need to have one mission. Okay, because they are Naaseh, they're Naaseh creatures, Naaseh creations, if you will. And Achinami, correct. That's exactly the point.
Children, when they're very young, they don't have to understand, they just have to be taught habits that are the right habits. And when they get older, they'll understand why they're doing it, and children of Israel, of course, were really children.
I'm still waiting for that to happen, right?
But it's so children as a nation just learning the process.
Correct. My suggestion for tonight is as follows on this particular Gemara, that the secret of the Malachim was blind obedience to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was the secret of the Malachim. And the minute that Bnei Yisrael put Naaseh before Nishma, what pledge did they make to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The pledge was blind obedience. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you tell us to do it, Naaseh, we will do it. Right? That's the Baskol that said, Mi Gilo Raz Zel Bini, who revealed this secret to my children. In other words, it's a heavenly secret. This is the way the Malachim operate. It's not something that people operate. It's not a plane on which people operate.
Revelation, and in the moment they said Naaseh.
Right. I'm not sure that the Gemara would be so full of praise for them if we could explain that they said it out of shock factor. Right. So let me just develop it a little bit more. All right. So that's the secret of the Malachim is Naaseh. And when Bnei Yisrael said Naaseh before Nishma, Kadosh Baruch Hu said, "Wow, I can't believe it." In other words, had they said Nishma v'Naaseh, Kadosh Baruch Hu would have said, "Oof, that's what I expected." Right? Nishma v'Naaseh. Let's figure it out. Let's learn about it. Let's see if it talks to us. Naaseh, then we'll do it. Kadosh Baruch Hu, just because you tell us to do it, we're not going to do it, right? Nishma v'naseh. Had they said that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I have to assume that HaKadosh Baruch Hu still would have given them a crown because they were still making that commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it wouldn't have been worthy of 2 crowns. Nishma v'naseh is the usual Seder. When they switch it around and they put Nasa first, so Kadosh Baruch Hu gives them a crown for this secret that the Malachim know, blind obedience, Nasa. But they could have stopped there. In other words, Bnei Yisrael, the Malachim don't have a Nishma.
They don't say Nishma.
Right? The Malachim don't have Nishma. The Malachim only have Nasa. So Bnei Yisrael could have stopped there just by saying Nasa. The fact that Bnei Yisrael didn't stop there and went ahead and said Nishma entitles them to a 2nd crown. Whereas 1 crown they got because they learned the secret of the Malachim, which is say Na'aseh first. But they got a crown for Nishma because they also said Nishma. They could have not said Nishma. They just could have left it as Na'aseh.
But in humans, there's got to be that counterpart of trying to understand.
Well, that's the point I was going to make at length, actually. I'm listening to a bunch of books right now on the Aristotelian revolution as it affected Sartre, Lazy, Rambam, what's that? I'm sorry.
What's that?
It's on great courses, but it's a Jewish. And anyway, for some of these characters, reason was the great enemy of faith. Because once you start thinking too much and trying to figure out, and this played out time and time again with the scientific revolution, enlightenment playing out today over and over again because people are out thinking how God exists, et cetera. But back then, when science came out through in various ways, Aristotle and all that thinking, there was this huge debate as to whether or not too much reasoning was a good thing or bad thing. And Rambam, I think, has one of his mitzvahs is actually to figure this all out. And your job as a observer Jew is to try to learn, study, understand what's going on. But there is a strong current in Judaism of don't try to figure out too much. And even in the Black Hat community, Hasidic community, they are so provincial.
Black Hat and Hasidic are 2 different worlds.
I meant the Hasidic community that they're so provincialized because they're afraid of exposure and
But a lot of them have their own.
It's an interesting idea. I think it ties a little bit into what we're saying here. Namely that, we would have thought, in other words, from the Gemara, it seems that the whole big deal is Kevan Shehikdimu Naaseh L'Nishma, right? That because Bnei Yisrael were willing to make that promise of blind obedience to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is what Naaseh before Nishma means. Naaseh before Nishma means blind obedience. From the fact that Bnei Yisrael were willing to make that commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, blind obedience, that's why they should get the crown. They should get a crown for that, no question. But what I'm saying is because Bnei Yisrael didn't stop there, and they went ahead and said Nishma, they got a crown for Nishma as well. But now, you could say they got a crown for Nishma because Nishma is Torah learning and it's important to learn Torah, and therefore they got a crown for Torah learning. I'm not disagreeing with you on that. What I'm saying is within the context of this Gemara, we can understand that it was the preemptive statement of Naaseh that brought them a crown.
Not only that, but the Nishma, if Naaseh represents faith and Nishma represents understanding and reason, the more you Nishma, it can make the Naaseh much more difficult because the more you understand and you come up with doubts and
But
questions.
isn't the Nishma also represented in the Torah Shabbat? The Torah Shabbat really explicates the Torah Shabbat. Without it,
Understanding.
that's the understanding. So maybe it's the concept of to accept both. They
That's what the Karaites didn't do it, the Sadducees didn't do it, and the Reform don't do
but
it.
to the Torah is both. It's Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh. Torah Shabbat Peh presupposes listening and talking and conversation and explication, right? So it's the acceptance of the Torah.
Correct. Just to go back to say that Bnei Yisrael did not willingly accept Torah Shabbat at this point.
They did.
Bnei Yisrael willingly accepted Torah Shebechsav. They did not willingly accept Torah Shebaal Peh. They accepted Torah Shebaal Peh, but only because of force, what's that called? Force majeure or something like that, right? Only because, right, they didn't have a choice, right? Kipa aleim har kigigis, right?
Why did they want to say?
Because it's much easier to simply do what you're told to do without all the back and forth and everything else.
Yeah, but I have a science. I mean, isn't it nice to have?
Look, the simplest and most emunistic Jews, there is such a word, were not the Jews who sat and learned Gemara. They were the Jews who sat and said Tehillim. Right? Remember, Gemara learning was not like it is today. It's not like everybody learns Gemara today. It's not like everybody learned Gemara at one point. At one point, people who were extraordinary learned Gemara. The rest of people learned Chumash, they learned Navi, they said Tehillim. Right? That saying of Tehillim was an expression of their emunah. Right? So there is something to be said for this simple faith. Right? This simple faith of the Jew who simply davens and says Tehillim and does Nasa without getting into the Torah Sheba'al Peh component of it. They weren't ready for this Torah Sheba'al Peh component of it yet. They accepted it, but they accepted it because they didn't have a choice. Up until the days of Purim, Kiblu, right? Kiblu v'kimu. Kimu v'kiblu. Right? We say there that's Torah Sheba'al Peh. That was the Torah Sheba'al Peh. We'll touch on this. We'll touch on this. But
You're saying that even now, it's strained a bit within the Hasidic movement versus
I don't want to say movements. I don't know people. I'm just talking ideas here. The idea is that Naaseh deserves, this blind Naaseh deserves a crown. It's a secret that the Malachi knew. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was surprised to see that Bnei Yisrael knew it. Bnei Yisrael made a commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They said Naaseh. And then only afterwards did they say Nishma. But the very fact that they said Nishma, I'm suggesting, is what gives them the second crown. Naaseh could have been enough. But remember, what does the Gemara say? B'sha'a shehikdimu naaseh l'nishma. It doesn't say b'sha'a she'amru naaseh. The whole kunz of Bnei Yisrael was that they put naaseh before nishma, but they also said nishma. Because if you're putting naaseh before nishma, it means you're saying nishma. Mark.
Okay. I think I know we got this proof. Because if you look in page 402, so it says,
Kol asher diber Hashem naaseh.
Right. It doesn't say anything about Nishma.
Right, correct.
So maybe what we're saying is that Naaseh began and they said it first, they get the crown, and then Nishma came afterwards. They get separate crown for that.
Okay, I mean, we have to deal with the fact that the phrase that B'shashi hikdim naaseh l'nishma seems to mean when they said them both together. Right? Right. And here was hikdim, from before. So, Mike, go ahead.
I just think that the question could be raised about the whole excitement of the Gemara central thesis about how great the Nasa was, Nasa and Mishra. Why? Why do I say that? Because in any position where you have a number of people and a supervening authority, Moshe Rabbeinu,
Navi.
in the army, the general, or the commanding sergeant, or whatever. Normal practice is to accept Nasa. The general tells you to attack a hill, to do a suicide mission where there's a machine gun that's up there, and you say Nasa. In fact, the Israel had it. There was a prelude to Har Sinai. In the trial, Moshe said, put the blood on the doorpost. Let's have Pesach korban. Get ready to go. And he said it's time to go. Everybody went. went and, they had the slum business, and then they said, go left, go right, we're not going there to Stroll, we're going here, we're going there. He was the presiding authority. And everything that he said, they basically did. So it's the human nature of the condition in this society, some kind of a societal or a group setting or a tribal setting, to obey the authority. We don't obey the authority has certain force or can issue punishments or discipline or whatever. So when they come to Har Sinai, and they have all, not only the fact of the giving of the Torah itself, but all the acoustics and the mountain shaking and the whole stage thing and everything else. That's authority. That's authority per se.
But
So
then
there's-
the absolute opposite is also true, and it's a notion within our thought process, because when you give a commandment, it's a greater mitzvah if you're commanded to do it than if you do something voluntarily. Why is that? Because if it's a commandment, the human beast is unwilling to take on obligations.
That's true. That's the
So there's a notion.
intellectual side, but we govern our behavior.
So, Mike, but what you're saying is that Naaseh should not have gotten them any crowns.
What I'm saying is the Gemara's excitement about the fact that they said Nasa under these conditions is questionable. I mean, it's nice, given what Torah is for. It's nice given its importance to the development.
So I think you have, so maybe then we need to rely on the fact that the Gemara doesn't say they got a crown because they said Naaseh. The Gemara says they got a crown, Kevan Shehikdimu Naaseh L'Mishma. In other words, if they had only said Naaseh, maybe we could use your argument, Mike. If they had only said Naaseh, what could we say? No, that's human nature, authority, power, they were intimidated by the power of Matan Torah, and therefore they said Naaseh. But the fact that they said Naaseh v'nishma, right, that already, that's a little, just to have said Naaseh would not have been so great. But the fact that they said Naaseh v'nishma,
The mishma will come later.
So there is, right, so there,
I won't understand, but there's still.
okay, so there is an interpretation. Rav Tzaratzkin in his Sefer Oznaim L'Torah suggests that's really what Naaseh v'nishma means. He's not basing himself on the Gemara Masechah Shabbos. He said, what does Naaseh v'nishma mean? Naaseh means, okay, whatever you told us up until now, Naaseh will do. And you know what? Not only that, but v'nishma, whatever you're going to tell us in the future, so we'll listen to that also, right? You've just read to us everything from the beginning of Bereshis through Matan Torah. You just read this all to us. We don't have to hear it because we just heard it already. Naaseh will do it. And you know what? Whatever comes in the future, Nishma will listen to that. And the implication being that just like we listened to this and did it, we'll listen to that and do it as well. I don't know who was suggesting that.
Or even if we don't understand it, we're going to do it, then we'll figure it out.
Okay, all right, but that's the idea behind it.
But that's going to be the condition of society all along. In other words, whether you listen, whether you don't listen, whether you try to understand, let's say we're in shul. That was one we're in shul. There's a protocol of how we behave, how we daven, the order in which we daven, everything is done according to protocol. So we may try to understand why we say something before Shul Esrei, why God, Yisrael is silent and all that. But the bottom line is the authority to which we subjugate ourselves says, do it this way.
Okay.
So the fact that we say, Nishma, that we come to a power Chumash class or a medrash or whatever, and we want to understand Nishma is an individual thing. It's nice, but societally speaking, we're going to oblige ourselves to do what the ruling authority said.
I understand, right? That's bringing a support to the fact that I even said Nishma afterwards, right? That's why I think they got the extra crown. Okay, we have a little bit more. I just want to move ahead a little bit. Okay. So at this point, after having said Naaseh v'nishma, what happens? They get their crowns. The Gemara says, "Vayikach Moshe es Adam vayizrok al ha'am." That what happens? Moshe Rabbeinu takes the dam and he is zorek it on the people. What does zorek on the people mean? Right? To throw the. How did they throw blood? Right? So there's a difference, it seems, between zerika and hazaya. Zerika and hazaya. Hazaya is sprinkling. Zerika is throwing. So even though here it says that Moshe Rabbeinu was zorek al ha'am, a lot of the Meforshim say it wasn't zerika, it was haza'ah, because when you talk about dam and people, it's haza'ah. So for instance, when we are in the process of becoming tahor from tumas mace, right? When the Kohen takes this water and ashes mixture of the paraduma, what does he do? He sprinkles it on us. He doesn't throw it on us, he sprinkles it on us. So Moshe Rabbeinu sprinkled this dam on all of these people. So that's also a little bit challenging, right? Right? You have 600,000 men, right? So you have 2.5 million people, let's say. 2.5 million people. Moshe Rabbeinu sprinkled the dam on 2.5 million people. How did he do that? How did he do that? How did Moshe Rabbeinu, I mean, while we're at it, right? How did Moshe Rabbeinu read the Sefer HaBris loud enough so that everybody could hear and everybody could agree? How did he do that?
He always spoke in God's voice when he speaks.
Right? So, I mean, clearly Matan Torah was filled with miracles that defy physical explanation. Right? They heard the lightning. They saw the thunder. That's not correct. You hear thunder and you see lightning. But the experience at Matan Torah was beyond the natural. They didn't see the lightning. They heard the lightning. They didn't hear the thunder. They saw the thunder. But all of our human experiences, our senses, were different at Har Sinai, right? So did Malachim come and help Moshe Rabbeinu sprinkle the dam on the people? That could be, did the wind come along and the wind carry the dam so that Moshe just threw it up in the air and the wind carried the dam, land on all the people? I don't know. Right? I wasn't there. I don't know. Meforshim are silent on this, but the idea is clearly that there was nace after nace at the time of Matan Torah.
Well, even in Mitzrayim, we saw Moshe and Aaron did bris milah on all the Jews in one day. How could that be?
Okay. I mean, you're right. You're right. Let's just finish the pasuk. Vayomer, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Hinei dam habris asher karas Hashem imachem al kol hadvarim ha'ela." Right? This is the dam of the bris that HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed upon with you. Al kol hadvarim ha'ela, on all of these things. When we come back next week, we have to understand what al kol hadvarim ha'ela means in all of these things. Is it the Sefer HaBris? If that's the case, what do we have to repeat it for? Right? Or does al kol hadvarim ha'ela actually mean something else? Next week is Hanukkah. I'm prepared to be here. And all right, we'll have class. Anybody have any objections?
No.
Okay. We'll have class.
I came in a little late, but in the review.
Go ahead.